Hey guys, tonight we travel back to the frozen north, to a land of smoke, snow, and screaming infants. You're not just hearing about the Viking Age, you're being born into it. Picture this: the reek of fish, the sharp sting of pine smoke, a screaming mother on a bed of straw, and a midwife muttering spells while holding a knife and a sheep's bladder. Welcome to your birthday. The longhouse is dim, flickering with torchlight. Outside, sleet slashes sideways across the moor. Inside, there's barely enough room to stand without bumping into someone's elbow or a hanging chunk of drying meat. You're entering a world where survival isn't expected, it's earned. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you feel is cold. Not the polite chill of autumn, but an ancient, merciless freeze that seeps into your new skin and makes your lungs hiccup. The hearth is barely a flicker, and the walls of the longhouse do little to keep the wind out. Your mother wraps you in animal hide, her hands trembling not from joy, but from blood loss and exhaustion. There's no doctor, no sterile tools, just her, a midwife, and hope. Your first bed, a carved wooden cradle if you're lucky, but more often a straw-filled box tucked beside the hearth where smoke settles and rats scurry. The floor is dirt, the roof leaks. You share the space with goats, chickens, and the occasional squirrel sneaking in for grain. Luxury, in this context, means not freezing to death on your first night. Infant mortality in Viking Age Scandinavia was brutally high. Historians estimate that over a quarter of babies didn't survive their first year. Diseases spread easily. Clean water was scarce. And if you cried too much in winter, someone might whisper that you'd awaken the drauga, restless spirits of the dead, and hastily hush you with sour goat's milk. Oh yes, the milk. Cow's milk was a rarity in poorer villages. You suckle from your mother, if she survives childbirth. If not, the options are bleak: a wet nurse, if one exists, or a terrifying Viking baby bottle made from animal horn, stuffed with rags, and filled with sheep's milk. If you're thinking, that sounds unsanitary, you'd be correct. Diarrhea was often a death sentence. Modern formula. Good luck. Meanwhile, you're given a name, but not right away. In some Norse communities, naming was delayed until the 9th day, when the child was sprinkled with water and officially accepted into the family. Before that, you weren't quite real yet. Some even believed the soul didn't enter the body until naming. It was a grim practicality. Why get attached to something that might not be alive tomorrow? And your name? Probably something inherited. Bjorn, if your grandfather was a bear of a man, or Sigrid, if your aunt died in childbirth. Vikings liked names with bite. They believed names carried fate. Give a child a weak name, and you invited misfortune. Give them a strong name, and maybe, just maybe, they'd survive their first winter. But don't imagine doting lullabies and pastel onesies. No one's singing Rockabye Baby here. More likely, you're being told tales of frost giants and wolves who eat the moon. You're being wrapped tight in rough wool, pinned down with stones to keep you from flailing. The darkness outside hums with superstition. People hang iron blades above your cradle to keep away trolls. A hen's foot might be tucked under your mattress, just in case. One odd little fact? Some Viking families buried a baby's placenta near the threshold of the house to protect the home from spirits. Others burned it as an offering to Freyja, hoping she'd grant fertility for the next child. Weirdly poetic, right? Your afterbirth becomes spiritual insurance. And while your parents love you, probably, they're also cautious. You're one of maybe 10 kids born in the past 5 years. 3 have already died. No one says it, but it's there in their eyes, the quiet calculation of how much emotional investment to risk. If you cry too much, you're swaddled tighter. If you cry too little, someone might check if you're still breathing. Meanwhile, outside your smoky cradle, life rolls on. Your older siblings are already carrying water from the river, chopping firewood, or skinning rabbits. Your father may be away, fishing, raiding, or dead. Your mother may be expected to resume work within days. Grief is a luxury. So is softness. You are born into necessity, not nurture. And then there's the cold again. Always the cold. Blankets are thin, and firewood runs low. If a harsh frost strikes early, there's panic. How many children can we afford to keep warm? Is it time to move? Who can breastfeed whom? These are questions with consequences. Historians still argue whether Viking communities truly saw children as cherished souls or simply as future laborers and marriage tools. Truth is, it was probably both. Love, in the Viking world, was tough, practical, and steeped in myth. You weren't protected. You were prepared. So here you are, maybe 1 week old. You smell like smoke and sour milk. Your blanket is damp. Your cradle has a crack in it. But you've survived longer than others already. And that's the first victory. You don't remember the first few years, but your body does. The cough that never leaves. The rash that comes and goes with the weather. The way your fingers curl instinctively around rough wool, not because it's warm, but because it's the only thing between you and the wind slipping through the gaps in the wall. Your bed is the floor, a scratchy mat if you're lucky. And there's no such thing as your own room, just one big smoky space where 20 things are always happening at once. Your uncle sharpening an axe, your sister brushing lice from her hair, the old man muttering to himself in the corner. You try to sleep between a squealing piglet and the family's water barrel. Guess who wakes up wet every morning? The longhouse isn't quiet. It never sleeps. The fire crackles, babies wail, someone farts, someone snores, and someone always steps on your arm on their way to the chamber pot, a wooden bucket in the corner. That thing? Oh, you know that smell. And toys. You wish. Play is a luxury, not a right. If you want to entertain yourself, you grab a stick. Or a rock. Maybe an old bone if your sister hasn't chewed on it yet. In wealthier families, children might have carved wooden animals or little rag dolls, but for you, the world is your toy box, as long as it doesn't get in the way of someone else's chores. Speaking of chores, by age 3 or 4, you're already working. No such thing as too young. You fetch water, gather kindling, clean fish guts, and carry stones. You don't do this because you're asked. You do it because the family needs it. The baby won't stop crying? Your job. The goat wandered off again? Your job. Someone needs a footstool. Guess who crouches quietly and holds still? Most Viking families depended on the labor of every member. Historians estimate that in poor households, children began meaningful contributions to the daily grind as early as age 4 or 5. Imagine asking a modern toddler to carry firewood through the snow without gloves. Now imagine being that toddler. Your clothes? A scratchy tunic, sometimes belted, made of undyed wool. If you're lucky, a second layer in winter. But shoes? Maybe. If someone died recently and their footwear still fits. Otherwise, welcome to the world of frostbitten toes. The path from your house to the waterhole might as well be a battlefield. Want to complain? Good luck. Viking parents weren't exactly big on gentle parenting. You cry, they might ignore you, or mock you, or, if you're especially unlucky, toss you outside to learn how wind works. One Norse proverb literally says, a child must learn to cry outside. Comfort is seen as softening, and softness is dangerous. And yet, somehow, this is normal. You don't expect better. You don't even know what better is. That strange man who visited once, the one with bright coins and soft hands. Your mother muttered that he was weak. Probably French, probably doomed. Still, even in this misery, there's rhythm. There's community. There's your mother brushing your hair with a carved comb made from bone, pulling, yanking, sure, but also humming a lullaby from her own childhood. There's your brother showing you how to trap mice with a loop of twine and a dead fish. There's laughter, rough and rare, but genuine. And let's talk briefly about what you do eat. When there's food, that is, your meals are almost always a stew. Boiled root vegetables, maybe some dried fish, maybe barley, if there's grain to spare. If someone brought home game, a hare, a duck, even a chunk of whale, you eat every single part. Tongue? Yes. Intestines? Absolutely. Brain? Fight your sister for it. Waste is blasphemy. Sometimes you get porridge, other times dried seaweed. On festival days there might be honey or cheese or real bread, but for most days your snack is a hunk of hard flatbread and something vaguely mushroom-flavored that probably isn't a mushroom. One quirky little tidbit? Some Viking kids chewed on birch resin like gum, which actually helped clean their teeth. Beats today's bubble gum, right? But let's not forget the animals. You live with them, not near them, not beside them, with them. Goats, chickens, dogs, the occasional horse, all share the space. You learn fast that stepping into the hay too quickly means getting pecked. You also learn to tell which animal sounds mean food and which mean danger. It's a lot like having roommates, if your roommates had horns and smelled like compost. One night, during a thunderstorm, you wake up to a chicken flapping violently over your face. Another time, you roll too close to the hearth and singe your hair. Your mother slaps your leg, not because she's cruel, but because you scared her. Fire isn't cozy here. Fire is barely controlled survival. Historians still debate whether children were seen as a joy or a burden in Viking households. Some sagas describe tender moments between parents and children, while others feature kids sent off to be fostered at age 7, sometimes with strangers as part of political alliances. Love and usefulness were intertwined. You were cherished as long as you contributed, and when you didn't, when you got sick or weak or just slow, that's when the stories came out. About the woods, the monsters, the trolls who steal children who cry too much, the draugr who drags lazy kids under the floorboards, the fox witch who feeds on daydreamers. You learn fast to move quick, stay quiet, and keep your eyes sharp. That dirt floor? It's not just where you sleep, it's where you eat, where you work, where you learn, where your baby brother was born, where your grandmother died. It's sacred and filthy at the same time. You stare at it a lot, because there isn't much else to look at. No windows, no books, no paintings, just shadows and straw. And you, curled up, hoping the roof holds through the storm. Milk is scarce, but myth is everywhere. You are raised not just on goat's milk and thin porridge, but on a steady drip of stories older than the timber above your head. You don't learn to count with numbers, you count with ravens. You don't say once upon a time, you say when the gods still walked the earth. Your lullabies are terrifying. One warns of Nuke, the shape-shifting water spirit who sings like a man but drowns children who wander too close to rivers. Another ends with a baby turning into a wolf cub and disappearing into the trees. Sleep tight. But that's the point. Myth isn't separate from life, it's part of the architecture. When you cough for 3 nights straight, your mother doesn't call it bronchitis. She calls it ill luck, or a spirit pressing on your chest. To fix it, the midwife smears a foul-smelling paste on your feet and ties a tooth around your neck. Does it help? Hard to say. But the smell clears your sinuses. There's no alphabet yet, not for you. Writing is rare and reserved for runestones, rituals, and wealthy traders. So your education is oral. Your grandmother tells you tales while pulling knits from your hair. Your uncle recounts Odin's sacrifice of his own eye while scraping hide for a new boot. You listen. You remember. You believe. In fact, believing is survival. If you don't leave an offering for the land spirits, maybe the goats get sick. Maybe your sister falls into the well. No one risks it. Not because they're gullible, but because life is already cruel enough. You don't tempt anything that might make it worse. The gods are everywhere, and they are exhausting. Odin watches your cleverness. Thor judges your strength. Freyja keeps an eye on your affections, and woe to you if you like the wrong person. Loki? He's the reason everything feels a little bit off. You stub your toe? That's Loki. You trip into a fire? Definitely Loki. You survive? Maybe Odin noticed. Even your chores are flavored by myth. You don't just stir the stew, you turn it clockwise to avoid inviting ill spirits. You don't sweep toward the door, you sweep inward, or your family's luck sweeps out with the dust. Quirky fact, some Viking communities believed a house spirit lived in the ashes of the hearth, and you were never to poke at it with a blade, lest you anger him. Yes, him. A soot goblin, basically. But the biggest myth of all? Childhood itself. It's not a protected bubble. It's a waiting room for adulthood, and the waiting room has no toys, no heating, and smells vaguely of dead fish. No one asks what you want to be when you grow up. The answer is already chosen, useful or dead. Still, you find moments of wonder. Like the time a wandering skald visits, his voice deep and musical, his stories laced with blood and starlight. He sits beside the fire and recounts the tale of Yggdrasil, the world tree. You picture its roots curling under your feet, its branches holding the stars. For a moment, the drafty longhouse fades, and you're somewhere between worlds, heart pounding with impossible dreams. Or when your mother whispers the saga of Herva, the shield maiden who journeyed to a cursed island to retrieve her father's sword from the dead. You sit, mouth open, imagining yourself in armor. Your sister smirks, you're still covered in goat dung, but for a heartbeat, you believe you could be a hero. Of course, the sagas are also practical. They teach you the value of strength, cunning, loyalty, and revenge. They remind you that wolves outnumber sheep, that fire can't be trusted, and that death waits for everyone, even kings. Historians still debate whether these myths were religious doctrine or flexible storytelling, but for you, they are truth. They shape your fears, your hopes, your understanding of the stars, your relationship to thunder, and your own body. Everything is bound in the web of gods and monsters. Your fever dreams become prophetic. You once woke crying after a nightmare where a tree sprouted from your chest. Your aunt said that was a sign you were meant to grow wise, or become a seer, or die young. She wasn't clear. You're told that some children are born with knowledge, marked by strange birth signs. One boy down the hill has a thumb without a nail. He's considered blessed, or cursed. Either way, no one sits near him during meals. Another girl is left-handed. They say she'll marry a ghost. She now eats in silence. And then there's the runes. You don't write them, not yet. But you see them, scratched into wood, bone, or the occasional stone. They hum with power. You touch them when no one's looking and hope they whisper something useful. Once, you made your own rune with a stick and chicken blood. You buried it in the garden. The carrots grew crooked that year. You also learned that names have power. Not just yours, but nicknames. Insults become armor. Goat face, ash breath, snot warrior. You wear them proudly, because if you cry, your brother will tell the skald you wept when he next visits, and then the entire village will know. Love is expressed differently here. Not in hugs or gentle words, but in stories told by firelight, in the way someone sharpens your knife without asking, in the care taken when sewing your winter cloak. Your father may never say, "I'm proud of you," but if he names you in a tale, even once, you'll remember it forever. Because that's how myth works. It carves the ordinary into something lasting. You won't get a statue. But maybe, just maybe, your name will slip into a story, passed down long after you're gone. If not, well, at least you didn't fall into a well. That's something. You're 5 now, old enough to carry a knife, though no one exactly told you when that became okay. You just picked one up one morning and started whittling a stick, and no one stopped you. That's basically permission. Playtime? It exists, but it's a side effect of chores. You and your friends race to gather firewood not because it's fun, but because if you lose, you get the soggy piece from the bog. You make pretend swords from driftwood, yes, but one of you always gets whacked hard enough to cry, and then someone older says, "Good, now do it again, but don't cry this time." There are no jungle gyms, no teddy bears. Your toys are carved from bone, antler, or leftover scraps of firewood. A few kids in the village have little wooden horses or painted shields, but most of you improvise. Once, you tied a dead fish to a string and dragged it around like a pet until it turned to mush. Nobody told you to stop. One quirky tidbit. Viking children sometimes used sheep knuckles as dice. You haven't quite figured out the rules, but you like the way they rattle in your pocket. Most of your games imitate adult life. Wrestling, chopping, carrying. You build tiny longhouses from mud and sticks, only to smash them with pretend raids. You mimic sword fights, and when someone gets poked in the eye, the adults just say, "Should have blocked better." Your chores multiply. You gut fish now. You know how to scale them, how to slice their bellies without mangling the insides. You've helped stretch a seal hide across a drying rack, the smell making your eyes water. You've gathered eggs, only to find one half-hatched with a dead chick inside. You didn't scream. That was important. There's no allowance, no gold star chart, no thank you. But once, your mother tore a strip of her own cloak to wrap your blistered fingers. That's love here. Quiet. Practical. Not always warm, but always present. School? Sort of. If you're the child of a chieftain or merchant, you might be fostered to another household for a proper education. But for most of you, learning means watching. You learn to track deer by following your uncle silently through the woods. You learn to barter by watching your older cousin haggle for salt. You learn how to smear fish guts into a burn because the midwife once said it worked. Did it work? Maybe. The scar is still there. Historians still argue whether Viking children were expected to act like miniature adults, or whether they had space to be, well, kids. The sagas don't give us clear answers. What we know is this: the moment you can do something useful, you must. And not just physically, emotionally too. There's no room for softness. Crying over a bruised knee? You're mocked. Flinching at a bloody nose? You're called a thrall-born. That's the worst insult, being compared to a slave. You'd rather eat a live eel than be labeled weak. Still, your body is small, and you get tired. And sometimes, when the others are playing war, you hide behind the hay cart and nap. Once, you fell asleep beside the fire and dreamed of a giant bear who spoke in riddles. When you told your sister, she said, "That was Odin. He probably thinks you're boring." You're also becoming aware of danger in a new way. Real danger. One boy in the village tripped near the river and cracked his skull on a rock. He was dead before sundown. No healer, no priest, just a rushed burial and a new tale about how the spirits claimed him for stepping where he shouldn't. Another child, a girl with red hair, was bitten by a stray dog. She survived, but not before her arm turned black with rot. You saw it. You still dream about it, so you learn. Fire burns, ice cuts, water drowns. The world around you is breathtakingly beautiful and completely indifferent to your survival. The forest can feed you or swallow you. The sea can gift you fish or steal your father. The sky can shine with northern lights one night and thunder like Thor's rage the next. You begin to carry a little knife tucked in your belt, not for defense, but for utility. To carve, to cut rope, to dig out something from a crevice. But still, it feels powerful. You touch it when you're nervous. You imagine fending off wolves, raiders, maybe even monsters from the sagas. You've never met a troll, but you've seen footprints in the mud that could be troll-shaped, and that's enough. You also learn to listen. The adults don't always talk to you, but they talk around you. You hear the old ones grumbling about a coming raid. You hear your aunt sob quietly when she thinks no one's listening. You hear the blacksmith talking about bad omens in the fire. You file it all away. Because even if you don't understand everything, you know this much: no one is going to explain the world to you. You have to assemble it, like a longhouse from mismatched timber. And one day, something shifts. You're walking beside your father on a hunting trip, and he tosses you a real spear. Not a toy, not a stick, a weapon. "Carry that," he says. Time you started acting like someone who'll survive the winter. You don't say anything, you just tighten your grip, nod once, and try not to drop it. Inside, you're terrified. Outside, you keep walking. You wake up to the sound of coughing. Not yours this time, your sister's. Deep, hacking, chest-rattling coughs that go on and on. She's wrapped in blankets by the fire, cheeks flushed and eyes half-closed, and your mother's murmuring prayers while spooning something dark and sticky into her mouth. It smells like boiled pine bark and horse fat. Welcome to your first experience with sickness. There are no doctors, no hospitals. The best healer in the village is an old woman with 3 teeth, a squirrel pelt for a shawl, and a pouch full of moss and mysterious powders. She mutters to herself as she works, spits on wounds to seal them, and swears that licking iron keeps away death. Honestly, you're not sure if she's a healer or a witch. Either way, she's your only hope. Disease is a constant companion. You don't understand why, but sometimes people just wither. Fever comes like a wolf, sudden, wild, and hungry. It steals breath, blackens skin, takes away your ability to stand. Children die more often than they live. You've heard whispers that half the children in your village never reach adulthood. Historians agree, child mortality in Viking times was staggeringly high, especially during winter or famine. You're no stranger to rashes, boils, or strange swellings. Everyone has worms. It's not even shameful, it's just something you complain about, like the weather. If you're lucky, your family can trade for herbs. If not, you just scratch. You share your sleeping space with siblings and animals, which means sharing everything: fleas, lice, coughs, fever. One quirky remedy for head lice? They'd shave parts of the head and smear the scalp with ash or resin. You once had half your head shaved and thought you were dying. Turns out it was just a beetle bite. Still, the look on your face made your brother laugh for a week. There's a type of cold that doesn't go away. Not the outside cold, but the inside kind. The ache behind the eyes, the chattering jaw, the rattle in your chest that even soup can't fix. You've seen kids waste away slowly, going quiet, coughing less and less, until one day they don't wake up. You remember those nights because they're silent. No fire, no snoring. Just the sound of adults holding their breath. You've also seen the other kind of sickness, the sudden one. A boil gone wrong. A bite that turns black. A fall from a roof beam that snaps a neck like a twig. There's no emergency response. No one screams. They just act. Wrap the body. Dig the pit. Say a few words. Life moves forward. Historians still argue whether Norse burial customs for children were as elaborate as those for adults. Some graves suggest care, tiny grave goods, carved toys, or small tools placed beside the child. Others are rushed, shallow, forgotten. Perhaps it depended on how many children a family had already lost. You get scared more often now. Not just of trolls or spirits, but of real things. A sore that won't heal. A strange smell in your cousin's breath before he collapsed. The bruise on your leg that seems darker than it should be. Every ache feels like a potential end. And yet, the adults rarely show fear. They spit on the floor and curse hell, the goddess of death. They make offerings, piles of bones or broken jewelry, left under certain trees. Your mother tied a red thread around your wrist once and whispered something you couldn't quite hear. It's still there, half frayed, your secret armor against the invisible. Even the weather can kill you. Cold snaps come fast and cruel. You've woken with your hair frozen to the wall. You've watched the stew in the pot freeze solid, spoon sticking up like a marker stone. And when it's too cold to work, that doesn't mean rest, it means hunger. No fish, no trade. Just smaller portions and more praying. Food is medicine, when you can get it. Broths with marrow, onion mixed with sour cream, hot stones dropped into birch bark bowls to warm goat's milk. You once ate something your aunt said was fermented seal fat. You weren't sure whether to thank her or cry. You chose both. The worst is when a child dies and no one talks about it. Just silence. No grave visits, no name spoken, just absence. It lingers, heavier than grief, like the gods took someone and left a cold wind behind. Still, life doesn't stop. The goats need milking, the nets need mending. Your little brother is crying again. No one gives you time to mourn. You learn to bury your sadness alongside the dead, and to carry on like a little warrior with mud on your face and snot in your nose. But sometimes, in the middle of a chore, you catch your mother staring at the fire with red-rimmed eyes. Or you find your father sharpening a blade that no longer has a use. And you know, they remember. You do too. You wake up hungry. Again. It's not the kind of hunger where you skip breakfast and complain about it. It's deeper, something that gnaws at your ribs, something that turns your thoughts slow and your hands shaky. The kind of hunger that makes everything else quieter. And this is only the beginning of winter. Outside, snow piles against the door like the world itself is trying to smother your home. The daylight barely lasts 6 hours. The sky stays gray. Your breath fogs even inside the longhouse. You chew on your sleeve and try to ignore your stomach. The stew pot is always hanging over the hearth. But what's in it? That changes. You learn early on that winter stew is mostly hot water with something brown floating in it. A bone, maybe. A cabbage leaf. If there's meat, you know someone made a sacrifice. Possibly the last chicken. Every day, you hope someone caught something. A bird. A rabbit. Maybe a fish under the ice. Your uncle brags that he once ate boiled fox. It's unclear whether that was a point of pride or desperation. Historians confirm that food insecurity was common among Viking-age families, especially in harsh winters. Crops were seasonal. Preservation was primitive. Salting and smoking only went so far. If the harvest was bad or trade routes failed, the result was hunger. Not just discomfort, starvation. You start to learn the signs. When the stew grows thinner, when the bread becomes smaller, when your mother starts cutting your portion in half and telling you it's to help your belly grow stronger. You nod, but you know better. It means things are getting worse. And when things get really bad, there's always the pot of last resort, a terrifying brew made from moss, tree bark, and animal blood. It tastes like dirt and regret. One quirky tidbit. In parts of Scandinavia, people boiled pine bark into flour during famine years. You've tried it. Once. You still taste it when you cough. Winter isn't just cold, it's hungry. It stalks you from the shadows, patient and quiet, waiting for weakness. Children are always the first to fade. Your little cousin, pale and quiet, stopped walking last week. She just lies near the fire now, too tired to cry. You watch your elders with new eyes. They eat less. Your grandfather forgets his bowl at mealtime. Your aunt says she's fasting to honor the gods, but you know it's for your brother. They're giving up their share so the smallest ones can last a little longer. You begin to understand sacrifice, not the big dramatic kind where someone leaps into battle, but the quiet one, the daily giving up, a crust of bread, a second helping, a bit of warmth. That's the Viking kind of love. Hard, wordless, bleeding from the edges. But hunger makes people strange, too. Tempers rise. Fights break out over scraps. Your neighbor beat his own son last week because the boy stole a hunk of dried fish. No one interfered. Not because they agreed, but because they understood. Desperation is contagious. Sometimes a family vanishes. Not in one night, but gradually. First they stop coming to the village feast. Then their smoke no longer rises from the chimney, and when someone finally checks, they find the longhouse cold, the fire dead, and nothing left but bones and silence. No one talks about it, but everyone knows. Historians still debate how often true starvation occurred in Viking settlements. Some evidence suggests they were skilled at storing food and adjusting diets. Others argue that ice ages and poor trade years made famine a recurring, deadly threat. The truth, somewhere in between. But you don't need records. You've lived it. And yet, even in this cold, this hunger, there's routine. You learn how to crack open bones for marrow, how to soak dried fish so it's chewable again, how to hold a spoon with numb fingers and pretend it tastes good. You also dream more, strange dreams, ones where you're full, warm, wrapped in seal fur, lying on a bed of moss in a sunlit glade. The gods are there. They're silent, but kind. You wake up drooling into your sleeve. Then someone hands you a cup of boiled bark water, and the dream dissolves like frost. Sometimes, in the dead of night, your mother tells stories, not to entertain, but to distract. She speaks of times when winter was kinder, when your grandfather once caught a stag in a snowstorm, and the whole village feasted for 3 days. You want to believe it, but the wind howls outside like it's laughing. Still, life goes on. You gather snow to melt. You patch the thatch to keep the warmth in. You walk across frozen ground on aching feet because the chores never stop. And one day, someone does bring home something. An elk, a pig, a miracle. The stew becomes thicker. The bowls fill higher. There's still hunger, but also hope. And for a brief moment, you feel the warmth in your belly and believe the gods haven't forgotten you after all. You don't go to school. You go outside, to the mud, the smoke, the edge of the forest, where the real lessons happen. And most of those lessons hurt. You learn quickly that knowledge isn't passed down gently. No one holds your hand and explains things with a chalkboard. Instead, they show you by doing it themselves or yelling until you get it right. And if you don't get it right, pain, not always on purpose, but pain nonetheless. Want to help sharpen a blade? Better not slip, or you'll lose a fingertip. Want to help chop wood? Then stand straight, grip tight, and pray the axe doesn't bounce. Want to herd the goats? Try not to get kicked in the face again. You learned that one the hard way. That's your education. Welcome to the school of hard knocks. Population, you, your bruised shins, and your slightly concussed cousin. It's not all random. There's structure, but it's embedded in living. Older boys teach younger ones to throw spears, build traps, and climb trees without snapping a leg. Girls learn to spin wool, gut fish, and knead dough with the kind of speed that'd terrify a baker. Everyone watches, copies, and gets smacked when they mess up. Some days you're taught directly, like when your father makes you hold a shield while he taps it with a stick. This, he says, is where the enemy strikes. Then he slams the stick into your side hard enough to knock the wind out of you. Lesson learned. It's not abuse, by the way. It's preparation. The Norse believed in toughening their children, mentally and physically. Mainstream historical sources describe Viking youth practicing combat techniques early in life. By age 7 or 8, most boys trained with wooden weapons. Some even accompanied raiding parties by their early teens. Of course, not every child became a warrior, but even those who didn't were expected to endure hardship. Endurance was currency. Crying, flinching, or backing down. That cost you respect, and once you lose that, good luck getting it back. There's a boy in your village who once fainted during a training drill. He's now nicknamed Goose Liver. No one knows why exactly, but everyone agrees it's humiliating. Still, there's something intoxicating about mastering survival. The first time you snare a rabbit without help, your chest swells. When you finally split a log in one clean blow, you want to shout. But you don't. You just nod and pretend like it was easy. You also start to understand status. The faster you learn, the more useful you become. And usefulness. That earns you attention, privileges, maybe even a better spot near the fire. And among Viking children, that's gold. One quirky historical tidbit: some Viking children competed in flyting, a form of verbal dueling where they'd trade insults in front of others, like a medieval rap battle with fewer beats and more dirt references. You've tried it. Your best line so far is, "Your face is softer than unturned butter." It didn't land. But physical competition is where the real tests happen. Wrestling, rock throwing, foot races through frozen mud. You do it all. You once got knocked unconscious by a snowball with a rock in it. Your reward: a bloody nose, a mild concussion, and your first compliment from an elder: "You didn't cry." That's good. Historians still debate how formal these early trainings were. Some believe it was all improvisational, based on village need. Others argue there were semi-organized apprenticeships, even among common families. Either way, you know this: nobody waits for you to be ready. You either keep up or fall behind. Your sister trains too. She's smaller than you, but faster. Her aim with a sling is terrifying. Once, she knocked a squirrel clean out of a tree. Your cousin tried to call it luck. She hit him with a rock the next day. In the shoulder. Hard. Not every lesson is physical. You also learn stories, symbols, expectations. Like how to host guests, how to sit silently while elders speak, how to tie knots, carve runes, or prepare offerings for the gods. And if you're fostered, sent to live with another household, you learn even faster. That's common among Viking children, especially those of higher status. You might be sent to a relative's home or a chieftain's longhouse. The idea isn't punishment, it's broadening your world. You haven't been fostered yet. But you know others who have. One boy returned with new clothes, a better knife, and a limp. He won't say what happened. Everyone respects him more now. Sometimes, the lessons blur into survival drills, like the time the river nearly iced over while you were bathing. You had to run barefoot back to the longhouse, clothes frozen to your body. Your aunt said it was good for your blood. You didn't feel your toes for 2 days, and yet there's a kind of pride in the misery. A fierce satisfaction in knowing that, today at least, you didn't fall, didn't flinch, didn't cry. You wear your bruises like badges. You boast about your blisters. And when you fall asleep sore and scraped, you do it knowing that tomorrow will hurt more and that you'll still show up. That's how Vikings are made. The gods aren't far away. They're not locked up in temples or drawn in dusty books. They walk beside you, or so you're told. Watching, judging, testing. When the wind rattles the thatch above your head, it could be just wind. Or it could be Thor, restless. Either way, you stop what you're doing and listen. By now, you know their names by heart. Odin, the one-eyed wanderer who gave up his sight for wisdom. Thor, thunderbringer and protector of mankind. Freyja, the beautiful and fierce goddess of love, war, and cats. Loki, the trickster who laughs while everything burns. And dozens more. You're not sure where their world ends and yours begins, because here, everything is spiritual, and that spirituality isn't peaceful. The gods don't comfort you. They dare you to endure. They respect scars. They admire sacrifice. They reward strength and cunning, but only sometimes. Usually, they just watch. Worship isn't folding your hands and whispering softly. It's loud, messy, bloody. You've helped prepare for rituals. You've stood beside the family pig as its throat was cut, blood caught in a bowl to feed the gods. You watched your father sprinkle that blood over the doorposts, muttering words older than memory. Then you ate the pig. The gods got the essence, you were told. You got the leftovers. And in this world, you don't just offer prayers, you offer pain. Once, when your little brother had a terrible fever, your mother pricked her own finger and let a few drops fall into the fire. "So Odin sees we've already paid," she whispered. It didn't work. He died anyway. She didn't cry, but she hasn't spoken Odin's name since. You grow up learning that fear is part of faith. The gods aren't gentle, They're unpredictable. Favor isn't something you earn, it's something you borrow, briefly, before it's snatched away again. That's why every blessing comes with a warning. Quirky fact. Some Norse households kept household spirits, or vetir, and would leave bits of food or ale out to keep them appeased. You've done it too. You even made a tiny clay bowl for one, then filled it with dried berries. Later that week, the family goat stopped limping. Coincidence? Maybe. But you refilled that bowl every night for a month just in case. You don't worship from a distance. Your life is the ritual. Every act, building a fire, pulling a fish from the net, even surviving the day, is part of your conversation with the divine. If you're weak, the gods ignore you. If you complain, they laugh. If you defy them and survive, then maybe they nod. Just once. And it's not just your family. The whole village lives in the god's shadow. There are runes carved into doorframes, charms made from bone or iron nailed over beds. The blacksmith has a hammer of Thor hung above his forge. Even the healer wears a necklace made of human teeth to keep spirits away. You once asked her whose teeth. She didn't answer. When lightning strikes close by, no one flinches. They nod and say, "Thor passed too low." When the sea gets rough, they pour ale into the surf for Njord. When someone falls ill, they don't just treat the body, they treat the spirit. With chants, with fire, with silence. Historians still debate whether the Norse believed the gods lived above them in some distant realm, or with them in the trees and stones and animals. But you don't debate, you just feel them. Like that time you got lost in the woods, chasing a fox you were sure was your spirit animal. You wandered too far. The trees got quiet, the light faded, and then, as fear settled in your chest, you heard a whisper, not a voice, exactly, but the kind of sound that feels like meaning. You turned and saw a crow. Just one. It stared at you until you followed. It led you back to the trail. You told no one. But since then, you leave crumbs near the fire for the watchers. The gods demand more than faith, they demand action. So when you're told to endure, you endure. When you're told to give, you give. You've even seen boys your age offer their own blood to consecrate a new boat. Just a small cut, but enough to sting for days. They were proud. You envied them. And yet, faith doesn't protect you. One girl prayed every night. She still drowned during a spring flood. One boy wore a pendant blessed by 3 elders. He still fell from a tree and broke his neck. The gods aren't cruel, but they're not safe either. You've begun to test them, quietly. You whisper small challenges into the dark. If I catch the fish, it means Thor is with me. Or, if I make it to the river and back without falling, Odin approves. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it keeps you moving. Because in this world, survival isn't just physical, it's spiritual. You don't just feed your body, you feed your meaning. You keep going because the gods are watching, and they expect you to try. And at night, when the fire is low and your belly half full, you stare into the shadows and wonder if Frasia's cats are watching from the rafters. You think you hear the whisper of wings, ravens maybe, or just the wind. But either way, you whisper a quick thanks, just in case. You don't have your own space, you don't even have your own blanket. You share everything, bed, food, chores, with the people around you. And that means one thing above all, siblings. And not just 1 or 2. Viking families are large. You might have 5, 6, even 10 brothers and sisters, depending on how many survived infancy. And while there are moments of laughter, mud fights, wild chases through goat pens, whispered stories after dark, there's also something else that comes with being packed together under one leaking roof: conflict. You fight, constantly, over food, over chores, over a spot near the fire, over whose turn it is to empty the chamber pot. You throw elbows, sling insults, and sometimes, yes, throw fists. But that's normal. In your world, bruises are part of growing up. In fact, they're expected. You and your siblings don't bicker the way modern children do. There's no go to your room, no time out. There's just a flash of anger, a clash of limbs, and someone ending up in a pile of firewood. Once, your older brother tripped you into a sheep trough. You kicked him so hard in the shins that he limped for days. He called you goat biter after that. The name stuck. And your parents, they don't always intervene. In fact, sometimes they encourage it. Fight smart, your father mutters when he sees you wrestling in the dirt. Better to bleed now than later. One time, your mother simply raised an eyebrow and said, "Use your legs more. Punches waste energy." It sounds cruel, but it's survival training. Sibling rivalry is its own battlefield, and the prize is toughness, quick thinking, and maybe the last piece of dried cod. One quirky little fact: Norse sagas are full of siblings who fight, sometimes to the death. Stories like that of Thorstein and Thorgeir, brothers who ended up killing each other over land and honor, were told as cautionary tales, but also with a weird hint of admiration. Strength was admired, even if it tore families apart. You and your siblings compete constantly. Not just physically, you compete for praise, for chores that earn you extra stew, for the right to carry the family axe on woodcutting days, even for who tells the best story around the fire. You once told a tale about a troll with 7 noses and got a full minute of silence before your sister smacked you with a broom and called you a liar. Worth it. There's no privacy. If you cry, everyone sees. If you mess up, everyone knows. One time you spilled a whole jug of goat milk and the entire family clapped sarcastically. "The gods are generous," your uncle shouted. You burned with shame and cleaned it up without a word. Still, your siblings are your protectors too. When you're sick, your sister wipes your forehead. When you're caught in a storm, your brother grabs your hand and pulls you home. When a stranger insults you at the winter feast, your cousin steps between you and throws the first punch. It's a strange, savage kind of love. Fierce, loud, loyal. There are no soft hugs or bedtime stories here, but if anyone outside the family messes with you, they'd better be ready to fight all of you. And in between the chaos, there are moments you don't talk about. The way you and your sister once curled together like puppies for warmth. The way your older brother gave you his only piece of smoked herring without a word. The way your youngest sibling fell asleep in your lap, drooling and snoring like a piglet, and you stayed still for hours because you knew he needed it. You learned that loyalty starts at home. If you can't defend your blood, how will you defend your kin in battle? That's the Viking logic. You bleed for each other, and sometimes because of each other. Historians still discuss how Viking households functioned with so many children crammed into small longhouses. Some argue that age roles were strictly hierarchical. Others think children raised each other as much as the adults did. Based on your experience, probably both, you've learned more from your sister's backhand than from your father's lectures. And there's another layer: inheritance. Someday, your father's land, or his boat, or his tools will pass to someone. And if you're not the eldest, that someone won't be you. This breeds a tension that simmers beneath every shared task. One day, you and your siblings may have to fight for real. Not with fists, but with fate. But for now, you survive together. You patch the roof together. You hunt rats in the storehouse together. You whisper gossip and dreams and secrets under the firs late at night, breath fogging in the cold. And when someone in the village dies, and they always do, you huddle close, tighter than before. Because even if you fight like wolves, you're part of the same pack. And that's everything. You wake up with the weight of something invisible pressing on your chest. Not a blanket, there's hardly enough for that. Not fear, exactly. More like a deep, crawling sense that something is wrong. That death is close. Because in your world, it always is. You know it like you know cold or hunger or the smell of boiled fish. Death walks among you, not as a surprise, but as a certainty. One moment, someone is laughing at supper. The next, they're pale and stiff, eyes open, mouth slightly parted like they were just about to speak. You learn to recognize that silence, that stillness. It fills the room like smoke, and you know, deep in your small, calloused hands, that it could be you next. The threats come from everywhere. Fires that spark suddenly, devouring wood and thatch. Wild animals, wolves, boars, bears, lurking just beyond the tree line. Disease that creeps in slow or strikes like a hammer. The sea, always there, always roaring, always hungry. You've heard tales of people slipping into the fjord and never surfacing. You've seen the aftermath of a neighbor struck by lightning, skin like twisted leather, hair burnt to ash. You once found a toddler face down in a puddle, blue and still. No one said a word. They just wrapped her in linen and walked away. Death is not an event, it's a character in your story. An uninvited guest who takes up space in the longhouse, in your dreams, in your games. You and your friends sometimes pretend to be dead, lying stiff on the cold ground, arms crossed like you've seen in burials. You take turns being the gods, deciding who gets into Valhalla. One quirky superstition. In some Norse regions, they believed if a child died with their eyes open, their soul might escape before reaching the afterlife. So elders would gently press the lids shut, whispering a prayer to Hel, the goddess of the dead. You've seen it done. You wish you hadn't. You sleep closer to the fire now, not just for warmth, but because it feels like the only thing that pushes back the dark. You keep your little knife tucked into the folds of your blanket, not that it could help much. Still, it helps you sleep. And dreams. Dreams have teeth. You've seen your grandmother in them, dead 5 winters now, but still whispering in the dark, warning you of storms, urging you to dig deeper when you find frozen roots. You wake unsure if the advice was real. You follow it anyway. Sometimes you hear your name whispered when no one's around. You don't tell anyone. They just say, "It's the land spirits." Or worse, nothing at all. Like they've heard it too. Historians still argue how much Vikings feared death versus how much they embraced it. Their sagas glorify dying in battle, sure, but what about those who die sick, or old, or in childbirth? These deaths are quieter, not honored with feasts, not sung about by skalds. They happen anyway, and they're just as real. Your cousin, the strong one, the funny one, coughed for 3 days and died on the 4th. No battle, no glory, just silence. Just a hole in the snow and a name you're not supposed to say aloud anymore. Some believe speaking a dead child's name could pull them back. Others believe it simply hurts too much. You start to wonder what your own death might look like. Would you feel it coming? Would you fight it? Would the gods watch? Would anyone cry? And yet, this awareness doesn't crush you. It sharpens you. You step more carefully near the cliffs. You test ice with a stick before walking. You count your siblings each morning without realizing it. You wrap your feet tightly at night and listen for the sounds no one wants to hear, coughing, crying, silence. But sometimes, death isn't loud. It's quiet, subtle. Like the girl who stopped speaking after her father vanished at sea. She sits by the fire now, eyes blank. You offered her a carved figurine once, a seal, made from driftwood. She took it, but said nothing. Still hasn't. And then there are the people who disappear, not from sickness, but from the world itself. One day they're here, the next gone. Maybe they ran, maybe they were taken, maybe they walked into the woods and decided not to come back. You once asked your aunt about your older brother, the one who vanished during a spring storm 3 years ago. He was chosen, she said. Chosen for what? She never explained. You've learned not to ask twice, but in this darkness, there's also something strange and defiant, humor. Even death gets laughed at. The skalds tell stories of warriors who died with their boots off and their pants down. You and your friends make up songs about dying from goat farts or choking on bones. It's not mockery, it's protection. If you can laugh, you're still alive. Still, sometimes you lie awake at night and wonder who will be next. Will you hear a scream? Will you wake to sobbing? Or will it be that strange stillness again, the kind that makes the fire seem too loud? But the next morning comes. The stew simmers, the goats bleat, the sun breaks through the clouds, even if only briefly, and for another day you're still here. And in this life, that's no small thing. It starts with shouting. You're outside, chasing chickens or hauling firewood, or helping your brother stack peat when the cry goes up. Sharp, urgent, not the everyday kind. You drop everything and run toward the sound, feet slipping in the mud, heart already thudding with that old familiar chill. By the time you reach the shoreline, others have gathered. Your neighbors, elders, children clinging to their mothers, all staring out at the water. A ship, not one of yours. It glides through the mist like a carved shadow, the dragon-head prow rising and falling with each wave. You squint. The shields along the side are painted red, not your village's colors. Someone whispers a name you don't recognize. Someone else mutters, "Not again." You've heard about raids, Vikings attacking other Vikings. It sounds absurd, but it happens, one clan against another. Over land, over trade routes, over blood feuds stretching back generations. Sometimes it's Danes, sometimes Norwegians, sometimes Swedes. Sometimes it's just men with boats and sharp axes who don't care who you are. The elders speak quickly. Some grab spears, others grab children, and then someone notices, your cousin is gone. Just gone. You hadn't even seen her by the fire that morning, but no one had thought much of it. She's 8, quiet, curious, always wandering near the shoreline, always watching the gulls. You remember her laugh, bright and strange, like it didn't belong in this muddy, smoky world. Now it's gone, and no one says anything. No one ever does. One man growls, "She wandered too far." Another says, "The gods took her." But everyone knows, the boat is already turning away, moving fast, too fast. No one gives chase, no one screams. The silence is heavier than grief. Historians still debate how common it was for Viking children to be kidnapped during raids. Some believe it was rare, collateral damage in coastal attacks. Others argue that child slavery was a shadow trade in the Norse world, not often written down but deeply woven into the economy. After all, who tends the hearth when all the adults are dead or away at war? You don't understand the politics. You just know that your cousin's shoes are still by the fire. Later that evening, the adults light more torches than usual. Someone leaves bread out on a stone, an offering to Frasier, or maybe to the land spirits. You ask your aunt what happens now. She says, "We pray." You ask what else. She says, "Nothing." That's the part that breaks you, not the loss, not the fear, but the stillness after, the complete inability to fight back. In stories, the gods always act. In stories, the heroes chase the boat, split the sea, and bring their sisters home. In real life, no one moves, but they remember. Your uncle carves a mark into the beam above the hearth. It's small, shaped like a hook. No one speaks about it. But every time you see it, you remember her voice, her laugh, the little braid she always twisted with one hand. You feel the weight of that shape, that absence. You start watching boats more carefully. Not just the ones offshore, but the ones your own people build. You wonder what it would feel like to be taken, to be shoved into the bottom of a hull with strangers, cold and hungry, not knowing the language. You wonder if you'd survive it, if you'd try to escape, if you'd remember your name. Quirky fact, some Viking children were fostered, voluntarily, into other clans as part of political alliances. It was considered honorable. But others, not so much. There are old songs, whispered more than sung, about storm-born children who were taken across the sea and renamed. You've never heard them in full. They make the elders go quiet. After the raid, everything changes. No one says it out loud, but the fear lingers. Children stay closer to the longhouse. You sleep with your cloak over your head. You don't look at the sea for days. Even the goats seem jumpier. But life continues. It has to. And in some strange way, That's worse, because the world doesn't stop when someone disappears. The chores remain. The stew still needs stirring. The goats still need feeding. The sun rises again, like it doesn't remember who's missing. You do. And so do the gods. You whisper your cousin's name when no one's listening. You carve it into a stick and toss it into the fire, watching the smoke spiral upward like a soul leaving. You don't know if it helps, but you can't do nothing. That's the thing about misery here. It doesn't come all at once. It arrives in pieces, in slow unravelings, in quiet vanishing acts. And the worst part is, no one tells you how to feel. You just carry it, like firewood, like snow, and you keep walking. If you're a girl, you grow up even faster. You're not just a smaller version of the boys, you're on an entirely different track. One that's steeper, lonelier, and lined with expectations you never agreed to. You don't get to dream about raiding and glory. You dream about not dying in childbirth. You're 7, maybe 8, and already people have opinions about your future. She's strong, they say. Good hands for spinning, hips for babies. You pretend not to hear it, but you do. You hear it all. Every woman around you works harder than the men. That's not an insult, it's a fact. Men leave. They sail, they fight, they die, but women stay. They keep the house standing, the children fed, the fires lit, the goats alive. And when the men come back, they feed them too. You watch your mother stretch bread dough with one hand while bouncing a baby with the other and yelling at a pig trying to eat her cloak. She hasn't slept a full night since you were born. She doesn't complain, but her hands are cracked, her back bent, her face older than her years. Historians are clear. Viking women were powerful, but not free. They could own land, divorce, run households, even sail. But from girlhood, they were trained for labor, and labor meant everything. Cooking, cleaning, spinning, weaving, milking, mending, brewing, butchering, birthing. You start spinning wool by age 6. By 7, you're helping tan hides. By 8, you know how to stretch a fish gut into thread. Not because you want to, but because your fingers are small and your mother's are swollen. She looks at you with both gratitude and exhaustion. There's no school for girls, just duties. You learn to keep the fire burning while the boys practice sword drills outside. You're told to watch your brothers, to tend the goat with the bad leg, to clean the combs your sisters used to pull lice from your hair. But you also listen. You learn the gossip. You learn which neighbor has a secret stash of herbs, which aunt used to be a shield maiden before she settled down. You learn to keep secrets, to trade favors, to read faces. These are your weapons. Still, there's no escaping the path laid ahead. You know what's coming. Marriage. Not for love. Not for adventure. For alliances. For babies. You hear the whispers. She'll make a good wife. That one's strong. That one's fertile. Words like compliments, but they stick in your skin like splinters. Some girls are betrothed as early as 10. The wedding comes later, but the deal is struck. And if the man is older, tough. If he's cruel, pray the gods are watching. One quirky and slightly haunting fact. Some Viking brides wore keys on their belts as a symbol of their new role, keeper of the household. Sounds poetic until you realize those keys also meant responsibility. Expectations. No escape. You try to pretend you're different. You practice with your brother's slingshot in secret. You carve your name into the underside of the longhouse bench. You dream of sneaking onto a boat and sailing away before they can match you to some bearded stranger who smells like pickled fish. But even dreams feel heavy here. And if you're already married, you grow older in a day. Suddenly, you're managing food stores, tending fires, keeping infants alive with cracked nipples and bad advice. You learn how to swaddle with one hand while stirring stew with the other. You learn how to soothe fevers with boiled moss. You learn how to bleed and survive. And children? They come quickly. Sometimes too quickly. Some live, some don't. You bury the ones who don't without ceremony. You don't name them until they've survived the first winter. You don't cry until everyone's asleep. You start to recognize the other women's silences. The way your aunt won't look at the cradle. The way your mother braids your hair tighter when she's remembering something she won't say out loud. And you know, there's strength in this misery. A quiet, unspoken solidarity. The women look after each other. They pass along the tricks that matter. How to stop a burn from festering. How to make your husband think something was his idea. How to bury pain without burying yourself. Historians still argue whether Norse girls were better off than their medieval European counterparts. On paper, maybe. But you don't live on paper. You live in the ache of your feet after a day standing over boiling vats. You live in the constant math of whether you'll bleed too much this time. You live in the quiet terror that one day someone will tell you who your husband is, and that'll be the end of you. But even here you find slivers of light. You learn to sing while you work. You learn which herbs make you sleepy, and which keep you awake through the hardest nights. You whisper with other girls by moonlight, trading dreams like stolen jewels. And sometimes, when no one's watching, you laugh. Because you have to. In this world you either carry your fate, or it crushes you. And you're not ready to be crushed. The sky is falling in thick, silent snow, and for once, just once, no one is yelling. You're outside, wrapped in every scrap of fur you can find, nose frozen, cheeks raw, but you're smiling. Because sometimes, very rarely, something wonderful slips through the cracks of hardship. Joy. Not the loud festival kind. Not the kind from feasts or weddings or anything that requires livestock to be sacrificed. Just the small kind. The fragile, flickering, blink and you miss it kind. Like this moment, you tilt your head back and catch snowflakes on your tongue. Your sister giggles beside you. For a second, neither of you are scraping soot off the hearth or pulling worms from a fish's stomach. You're playing. You're alive. And that's enough. There's a bonfire being built in the square. Not a funeral one this time. A celebration. It's Joel, or what some now call Yule, the winter solstice. The longest night of the year. After this, the sun begins to return, one drop of gold at a time. You help carry wood. You drag dried branches into place. You huddle with the others as flames rise, popping and crackling like a living god. The warmth kisses your face. Sparks swirl into the sky like glowing insects. Someone brings out a drum. The rhythm begins, deep, steady, ancient. You stomp your feet. You clap. Someone plays a bone flute. There's laughter. Real, hearty, belly-deep laughter. And for a moment it's like the longhouse isn't a prison but a sanctuary. Like the gods, for once, are smiling. Even the elders soften. Your father slaps someone's back. Your mother lets herself dance. Just a little. She spins once, arms in the air, before catching herself and straightening her cloak. But she was smiling. You saw it. Mainstream historians often describe Viking society as hard, brutal, joyless. And it was. But even the hardest lives have light. Evidence suggests that Norse communities found joy in storytelling, music, crafting, and especially in communal celebrations, even during the bleakest times. And the kids find joy in the strangest places, like skipping stones on the frozen river, listening for the high-pitched zing as they glide, or pretending a moss-covered stump is a frost giant's head, or sticking your tongue to a frozen axe blade because someone dared you and immediately regretting it. You once laughed so hard you fell backward into a barrel of pickled herring. Your cousins still bring it up. Fish face, they call you. You threaten them with a ladle. They call it a fair trade. There's joy in creating things too. You carved your first wooden figure last week, a bear with crooked ears. Your brother said it looked like a slug. Your mother tucked it into her belt anyway. There's joy in stories. You gather near the hearth, wrapped in shared cloaks, listening to the skald tell of gods who get drunk and embarrass themselves, of a goat who produces ale from her udders, of a dwarf who lost a bet and ended up stuck in the form of a salmon. You laugh. You remember. You pass it on. And sometimes, joy sneaks in during silence, like when the snow falls so thick and soft that all sound disappears. You lie on your back, staring up, the world muffled and still. You feel something deep and slow move through you, not happiness exactly, but peace. Like you're part of something bigger than goats and fish and firewood. One quirky custom. In some Norse villages, children would leave carved tokens in tree hollows during solstice nights, hoping for blessings from the land spirits. You've done it too. Your token was small, just a piece of bone shaped like a star. You whispered your wish into the hollow and didn't tell anyone what it was. Joy is rare here, but not impossible. You just have to notice it. Catch it like a snowflake on your palm before it melts. There's joy in being useful. In seeing your sister wear the cloak you patched. In watching your father eat stew made from your snared rabbit. In hearing someone say, "Good work." Not often, but sometimes. There's joy in surviving. In waking up and realizing you still exist, that your feet still work, that the fire didn't die in the night, that the stew didn't burn, that the gods, ornery and strange, let you live one more day. And maybe that's the sharpest joy of all, resistance. Every laugh, every story, every game of knucklebones is a rebellion against cold and hunger and fear, against everything that wants to grind you down. Because here's the truth, they don't put on the runestones. Misery doesn't kill joy. Misery highlights it, makes it shine brighter. And tonight, the fire is warm. Your belly is half full. Your mother is humming. And snowflakes swirl through the air like someone shaking glitter over the world. You smile into the flames. Just for a second. You wake up different. You don't look different, not really. Still skinny, still covered in scratches, still wearing the same patchy tunic. But something has shifted, and everyone around you knows it. Because you're not a child anymore. No one threw a party. No one handed you a cake. There was no warm congratulations. Just a quiet nod from your uncle, a slightly longer stare from your mother, and the announcement that you would now be joining the adults for the spring hunt. And that was that. Coming of age in Viking culture isn't marked by a birthday or a certificate. It arrives like a sudden storm, through pain or blood, or work that leaves your hands raw and your knees shaking. There's no single ritual for everyone, but something always happens. For you, it's the hunt. They wake you before sunrise. Hand you a real spear this time, not carved, not dulled, iron-tipped, sharp enough to kill. You feel it in your hands and suddenly realize it's not a toy anymore. If you mess up, someone gets hurt. Maybe you. You trek into the frost-dusted woods with 2 older boys and your father. No talking, just crunching snow and the steam of your breath in the still morning air. You want to ask questions, but your throat is dry. The hours drag. You scan the underbrush, trying to stay quiet, trying to look confident. Your arms ache. Your fingers go numb. Then, a rabbit. Not majestic, not fearsome, just fast. And your father says, "Take it." You move. You throw. You miss. The rabbit vanishes into the trees. You brace for laughter, or worse, disappointment. But your father just grunts and says, "Next time, aim lower." That's it. No scolding, no shame. Just another chance. And later, hours later, when you do get one, when your spear finds its mark and the rabbit kicks once, then stills, you don't cheer. You just pick it up, heart pounding, and nod. Because that's what adults do. Historically, Norse children were expected to take on adult responsibilities early, especially around age 12 to 14. For boys, that might mean joining a raid, handling weapons, or taking part in legal assemblies. For girls, it could mean marriage, childbirth, or managing a household. These transitions weren't always marked by formal ceremonies, but they were unmistakably real. For girls, coming of age can mean something more frightening: blood. Your older sister gets quiet one day. She winces when sitting. She moves slower. And then you find her washing cloth in the stream, face pale. She sees you and says, Simply, "Don't tell mother yet." You nod. You understand, even if no one ever explained it to you. Later, your mother gives her a small pouch of dried herbs. Your aunt helps her sew a new set of underclothes. There's no celebration, no flowers, just new rules, new expectations. You hear the word marriage spoken more often around her now. And for some, it comes even sooner. There's a girl in your village, barely 11, promised to a man 3 times her age. His beard has gray in it. He owns land. Her father says it's an honor. She hasn't spoken since the agreement was made. You wish you didn't understand what that meant. Coming of age means choices, but not always your own. It means seeing the path ahead and knowing it's mostly already walked. It means responsibility, pressure, and, sometimes, pain. But it also means freedom, in strange little ways. You get to stay up later. You're trusted to walk the ridge alone. You get to make things, real things, without someone fixing them behind your back. Your mother lets you sew the whole sleeve this time, even if the stitches are crooked. Your uncle lets you cut the firewood your way, even if it takes longer. You feel yourself stand straighter. Your voice changes. Your thoughts get sharper. You understand the rhythm of chores now, how to pace yourself, how to find moments of rest hidden inside the labor. You start noticing when others are tired. You offer to take their place. One quirky rite of passage? Some boys in coastal villages would swim naked into icy fjords as a test of endurance. You've seen it. You've even done it once. You screamed the whole way in and out. But afterward, they clapped you on the back and handed you warm ale like you'd conquered death. You've also begun to understand that this moment, this transition, is both a door and a burden. There's no going back, no more excuses, no more pretending you're too small, too young, too confused. Now, when the goats escape, you chase them. When someone is injured, you fetch the healer. When a baby won't stop crying, you bounce them on your hip until they do. Not because anyone asked, but because you're expected to. And here's the strangest part. Part of you wants that. Because being a child meant fear without control, hunger without choice, sickness without knowledge. But being older, even just a little, means you can do something. You can push back. Not always successfully, not always safely, but on purpose. You still get scared. You still dream of giants and trolls. But now you carry a knife. Now you walk into the forest, not just around it. You're not done growing, not even close. But the line has been crossed, and you don't look back. You don't notice at first. The change is quiet, subtle, like frost retreating from a window pane. But then you look around and realize just how many of you are gone. That's the final truth no one says aloud. Not all children make it. You remember them. Not all their names maybe, but their faces. The girl who used to braid moss into her hair. The boy who always chased birds with a stick and claimed they listened to him. The baby who never learned to speak, but laughed like she knew some secret the rest of you didn't. One by one, they faded. Fever. Cold.
Accidents. Hunger. Or no reason at all. They were there, and then they weren't. And the world just kept going.
No gravestones. No memorials. No long speeches. A hurried burial. A whispered offering. And silence. Even the longhouse forgets. A blanket is used by someone else. A name stops being spoken. A seat by the hearth grows cold, and then someone else sits there. You learn to count with your heart, and subtract. You keep a little tally in your head. You remember the time you had 10 friends, then 8, then 6. You don't say it aloud, you just know. Historically, mortality rates for children in Viking-age Scandinavia were staggeringly high. Some studies suggest up to 40% of children didn't reach age 5. Others estimate fewer than half reached adulthood. The records don't tell their stories, but you remember them anyway. One quirky practice? Some parents would delay naming a child until it had survived for a few days, or even weeks. It wasn't superstition. It was emotional survival. Why name something you might have to bury before the snow melts? You've started helping with those burials. Digging in frozen ground is back-breaking work. The cold bites deeper than ever when you're carving space for someone you once played tag with. You don't cry, you dig. That's the Viking way. And yet, they're not forgotten. Not really. You find reminders everywhere. A bone carving tucked into a wall beam. A tiny shoe someone never grew into. A song hummed by an elder when she thinks no one's listening. The way your sister stares at the sea every sunset, like she's waiting for someone. The pain doesn't go away. It settles. It becomes part of you. But still, you endure. You wake up. You do the chores. You walk the ridge. You patch your tunic. You help pull the sled through the mud. You make jokes about goat farts because that's the only thing that gets your cousin to laugh again. And then, on one strange golden afternoon, you feel warmth. Not from the fire. From the sun. It's climbing higher in the sky. The days are stretching. The ice is cracking. You hear water moving again. You see green pushing through the snowmelt. You realize you've survived the winter. Not everyone did. But you did. And that means something. Your mother holds your hand longer than usual. Your father nods at you from across the yard. Your sister shares her bread without being asked. You find yourself smiling more, just slightly, just enough, because you're still here. And now you carry the stories, the memories, the names no one says, the faces only you remember. You hold them all like fire in your chest, not to mourn them, but to honor them. That's how you know you're no longer a child. You're a survivor. And maybe, just maybe, a future skald will sing of you someday. The one who endured, the one who kept walking. Even when the snow got deep, even when the longhouse felt like a tomb, even when the gods were silent, you lived. And that, in this world, is everything. So now, let the cold fade. Let the snow melt from your shoulders, the dirt wash from your hands, the smoke drift from your hair. You've walked far tonight, through hunger, fire, frost, and grief. But you've also touched joy. You've tasted it in stolen moments, warm bread, shared laughter, and falling snowflakes caught on your tongue. You've seen how pain makes the heart sharper, how even children grow into warriors, not through swords, but through silence, loss, and the weight of responsibility. And you've felt what it's like to survive in a world that asks far too much, far too soon. But still, you endured. And now, the fire is low. The longhouse is quiet. You're not alone, though. You carry with you the stories of those who came before, the ones who didn't make it, the ones who did. The gods are silent now, but not gone. They're watching, maybe, or maybe they've fallen asleep too. Let your breath slow. Let your hands relax. There's nothing more to carry tonight. You've seen the worst the Viking world could throw at you. And you didn't just survive it. You walked straight through it. Head up, heart steady. So rest now. Dream of longboats gliding over calm seas, of warm cloaks and full bellies, of snow that falls softly, not cruelly, of a sky so wide that even the gods would envy it. You made it. You're home. Good night.